seems to be an issue that goes beyond these protests, Army. We've seen violent criminals who are released again and again, whilst you've got Bragg preoccupied with this nonsense with Trump. Now, that's out of the way, but it seems that philosophy of not putting people in jail when they commit violent offences is continuing in New York. Is there going to be any change in that? Is there any sort of a uprising from the local population there who are sick of the crime rate?
Yeah, no, people see, look, this is what we are finding is that people, when they are, even if they are left of center, right, and they're Democrats, when they're confronted with reality, they in fact do start to show their discomfort. I think you're now seeing in the polls across the country, where in states where Democrats have dominated, right? In Virginia, where a Republican hasn't won in over 20 years. In Minnesota, a Republican hasn't won over 50 years, right? In New York State, where a Republican hasn't won also in over 25 years, we're seeing these things creep within the margin of error or be tied, or in the state of New York, far better than ever done before, because whether it comes with crime or immigration, I think people now see, even Democrats, this cannot work. This cannot stand.
Well, Donald Trump and Joe Biden will face off in their first televised election debate for 2024. It's this Thursday, Friday morning, our time. The rules they've set out for this debate seem to favour Joe Biden, things like muting the microphones unless it's their turn to speak and no live audience. And really, does anyone think the Biden camp hasn't got the questions already? And this debate is on a vehemently anti-Trump network, CNN, that relentlessly pushed every conspiracy theory and hoax, from the Russian collusion hoax to the fine people on both sides lie to the Hunter Biden laptop being Russian disinformation. And Army, the debate is going to be moderated by two Trump-deranged individuals, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. Now, everyone knows what a biased hack Bash is, but some still think, despite his part in enthusiastically pushing every anti-Trump disinformation we've heard in recent years, a lot of people still think Tapper is a straight shooter. But just have a look at this, see how overjoyed he was when he learned Trump would no longer be president.
Extreme divisions, many of the divisions caused and exacerbated by President Trump himself. It's been a time of several significant and utterly avoidable failures, most tragically, of course, the unwillingness to respect facts and science and do everything that can be done to save lives during a pandemic. It has been a time where truth and fact were treated with disdain. It is a time of cruelty, where official inhumanity, such as child separation, became the official shameful policy of the United States. But now the Trump presidency is coming to an end, with so many squandered opportunities and ruined potential, but also an era of just plain meanness. It must be said, to paraphrase President Ford, for tens of millions of our fellow Americans, their long national nightmare is over.
The nightmare is over. The meanness of the border policies, Army, not respecting the COVID science. That little rant hasn't aged too well.
No, look, I actually have known Jake Tapper a little bit. We're somewhat in contact with each other. I kind of like him personally. And I think that everything, it's all relative speaking. I think relative to other people on CNN or MSNBC, he's not that terrible. He is absolutely no fan.
Oh, well, that's saying something.
Trump, as you saw there. True. Look, at the end of the day, why did Trump take these debates so quickly, even though he knew that it was stacked against him? He did it because Joe Biden wasn't going to debate otherwise, right? Look, we were debating this and talking about this before. There was a good chance there will be a first time in presidential history, modern presidential history, that there wasn't going to be a debate. Trump knew that and needed to make this move in order to get Biden to debate. We all know the bias against Republican candidates on these debate stages. This is nothing new. These debates are run by the mainstream media. They're hosted by the mainstream media. And we all know statistically they vote Democratic. No question about it. But the truth is, this debate, it is so important because this race is so tight that even though Trump is leading in a lot of the battleground states, they're all in a statistical dead heat. And there aren't going to be many inflection points during the course of this election. This is going to be one of those inflection points. And in fact, I do think that this debate will set the trajectory for the rest of this election. And it'll be very difficult if somebody takes a large lead from this debate. It'll be very hard for that other person to come back. So I think this is important. I think, frankly, counterintuitively, the mics being shut off may actually help Trump in a couple of ways. First of all, it goes against it kind of pulls him back from his self-destructive nature of kind of being a little bit of a jerk on camera, which he can be sometimes, a little bit over-aggressive. I think he does better when he's calm, cool, and collected. I think this will force him to do that. And frankly, you want Joe Biden to have time, right? And not to be interrupted by Trump, because when he has time, that's when you see Biden self-destruct. He may not even make it through the entire time that he has allotted to him. We've seen it before. We've had a minute, and he stopped 15 seconds short and just stares at the camera. So that actually could work in Trump's favor.
Well, he's going to be practicing like hell for the next few days in preparation. And it's interesting because there's a poll that's been released showing 70% of voters want Donald Trump and Joe Biden to submit to drug testing before the debate. Remember, Trump accused Biden of being as high as a kite and all jacked up during his State of the Union address back in March. And I've got to say, Ami, I like this idea, particularly when it comes to Joe Biden, because there is such a vast difference in the Joe Bidens we see these days. And it's hard to explain. He can be lucid, almost speed talking like he was during the State of the Union. And then he seems utterly lost and slow and incoherent. But before you go, I've got to ask you about Star Wars. We covered this earlier in the year, this painfully woke new series, The Acolyte. It's getting a massive backlash from fans. The audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is 13%, which is terrible, but the critics naturally love it. It's got 85% with the critics. But Elon Musk, a Star Wars fan, has said Lucasfilms has killed Star Wars with its woke propaganda, calling President Kathleen Kennedy more deadly than the Death Star. How do you see this? Is there anything redeeming about this series? Are people, I don't know, are people overreacting, or has the series been killed now?
Yeah, look, it befuddles me that companies, in this case Star Wars, would take such overtly political positions and essentially poo-poo and 50% of the population that buys their products. Like Michael Jordan famously said when he was asked, why is he not taking more social positions? He says, because Republicans buy shoes too, right? That's a sentiment that every company, particularly one that has stockholders, should learn from. Disney stock is down 50% since 2021. Okay,
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's who they have to. They have to satisfy the shareholders. They are not doing that. This whole idea about you have to diversify storytelling so you can identify with the characters on camera has never made sense to me. Look, I'm a Jewish person. There are not that many Jewish people in Star Wars. Yet I still identify with the good Star Wars, not the crappy Star Wars. There have been many crappy Star Wars. Yeah, look, because it's about good versus evil. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or a woman or a man. You could identify with that. And I think that they are really doing themselves a disservice by focusing and leaning into wokeness. It doesn't make any sense, and it's killing them.
It is, but it's so ideological that they're copying the self-harm. They're copying the audience backlash, the share price plummeting, all the bad press they're getting, Disney, and they just keep pushing this barrow. You got to think at some point there's got to be a stop to it. Ami Horowitz, we always enjoy having you, and we'll speak to you next time. The debate would have been run and won, and I'll be looking forward to your insights.
Always a pleasure.